Okay, so the goal of this two-part series on deliverability is to first establish with the first session common ground. So I'll touch on three concerns I usually have or see with agencies when it comes to this topic. So you aren't sure how to scale. So how do I scale? When do I scale? My infrastructure for sending. You as an agency need to provide value from day one, whereas the medium which you provide value with, aka email, is not really ready to send from day one. Yeah. So how can I go around that? How can I help myself with that restriction in mind? And then you don't want to deal with deliverability. Like, it's not a topic that everyone wakes up in the morning and thinks, okay, today I'm going to work on my deliverability and I'm going to nail it. It's usually a topic that you don't deal with. It should just work. So I hope to help you guys with that topic in regards of being aware, being proactive, and then being confident navigating this rather complex topic so that you don't have to worry about it every day. All right. So 300 million billion emails are being sent every single day. Yeah, that's a lot of emails. And also a lot of emails for the email service providers to look at, or potentially not even look at, to scan on a surface level before going deeper. In addition to that, 50% of that is usually spam. So you have to think, you put yourself in the shoes of an email service provider. They have to be very suspicious on any kind of emails that come in to keep their inboxes clean for their recipients or for their users that are paying them money to use. And 50% of spam, that's statistics that I found from quite a reputable source, but due to the pandemic and kind of the fact that the price per prospect is very low, you can get a prospect now very cheap of an email address, that 50% is probably higher, and it's going increasingly higher. So keep that in mind, that it's very tough to go through into their inbox. All right, so as an email service provider, they see a lot of different email streams. Yeah? There are email streams from scammers and spammers. There are email streams from companies that try to send newsletters. There are email streams where you are sending an email to your family, or if your family writing you, you send emails to your clients, or you're trying to contact your prospects, right, via cold email. So for every stream of emails, there's a place for them to go, right? And the ESP has to decide where these emails go. So for scammers and spammers, we would usually think or expect that they go to spam. For companies sending newsletters, usually the place where they land is promotions, right, or updates. When your family writes you, you would expect that to go to your inbox. You're sending emails to your clients, usually you would expect it to go to inbox. And you're trying to send a cold email to your prospects, well, that's the question, right? Where should that go? Where should an email service provider put that? And often, to make this decision, they look at characteristics and signals, basically your reputation, if they can trust you as a sender, right? So if you look at those three email streams, they all have one thing in common, and also these two have one thing in common, meaning those in green mean that the recipient knows you. Yeah, they either have opted in, like in the case of newsletters, or double opt-in, or your family, they probably know you, right? Your clients know you. Whereas scammers and spammers and their recipients do not know those scammers and spammers, as well as if you send to someone a cold email, they don't know you, right? Because it's an email that they didn't expect. So right from the beginning, when you start sending cold emails, you are a little bit at a disadvantage because you are sharing a characteristic with scammers and spammers. Yeah, and the goal of these sessions is to help you guys be aware of that, right? You're starting with in this position, but to also be able and be aware of what kind of good characteristics can I generate so that I can outweigh that starting position to be in my favor and to actually land in the inbox. All right, let's start with sending infrastructure. So domains, emails, providers, authentication. And this is, for some of you, probably basic, and I know that the majority has this in place, but for those that don't, especially with Google's new requirements, keep that in mind to set those up. So when you have a new domain on email, you have to set up SPF. SPF, DKIM, and DMARC, which you're going to see in a moment, they're all here to make sure that you are authenticated and a trusted sender. So for SPF, basically the idea here is to define who is allowed to send in your name. Yeah, you list IPs and services, and you don't need to add Woodpecker to it because we don't provide infrastructure for sending. We simply take your email infrastructure, for instance, Google or Microsoft Outlook, and we ping the right prospect at the right time. Yeah, we don't provide our own infrastructure, so we don't need to be listed in the SPF. Then you have DKIM, and DKIM is basically signing your email with like a unique key so that your content is kept safe. So you could think about it kind of like a letter with like back then in the medieval times, like a king's seal. If the seal is broken, that it means someone has tried to alter your content and try to spoof your email, insert malicious links and stuff like that. So DKIM is there to make sure you can detect whether your email has been altered on. Yeah. And you set up DKIM to show the ESP that you want to make sure that your content can be trusted. Yeah. And keep in mind that depending on the settings of the email service provider that reads that email, an email failing DKIM may still land in the inbox. Yeah. And now you have a problem that there is a link in that email to a malicious website and might tarnish the reputation of your company. Yeah. So that's where DMARC comes into place. Yeah. So with DMARC, you are able to say and define rules what happens if FPS and DKIM fail. And there's 3 modes you can set it for. The most forgiving mode, let's say, is none. So this, if you turn this on, it only gives you reporting. And I'm going to cover that reporting in a moment. If you set it to quarantine, then any email that does not pass SPF or DKIM will go to spam. Or you can be very restrictive and you can say any email that does not pass SPF or DKIM will be rejected so that it will not be delivered. When it comes to reporting provided by DMARC tells you whether your SPF or DKIM has passed or failed. And it also tells you which IPs or which senders are involved in using your domain. So the general rule is to set up DMARC with a none policy first so that you can see the reporting. And if and only if you're sure that everything is all right, you may go to quarantine or reject. Yeah? Generally, it's better to just have it on at none in the beginning, especially if you're unsure if your DKIM and SPF pass. All right. What DMARC also adds is an additional layer of security or trustworthiness, you could say. So it allows you to set validation on the sending domain. So the from address. So when someone gets your email, they will see an address from, whether that one is aligned with what you have set up in DKIM and SPF and DMARC. Yeah, so it can help you to catch whether someone kind of uses a different domain, spoofs your domain. So that's also very useful to have DMARC in place. All right, when you're in Woodpecker in the agency panel, we have these kind of checks in place. So you can have here SPF, DKIM, and domain. So what we're looking at every day when you have a mailbox connected to Woodpecker, we will send an email to our checker and update whether your DKIM SPF is passing. And we'll tell you also what the domain age is of the domain that the email belongs to. If you have set up or corrected SPF DKIM and it wasn't properly set up, you can also on demand refresh that, and then you get data back here. You don't have to use external tools. You can see that here. Also for each of your clients, whether the mailbox has passed those settings or not. So that's important to be aware. It's also important to know that it can break with time, right? If someone edits that in the DNS panel, something changes, or you have a new provider that is kind of an intermediary to send emails in your name, you may need to be needed to update those settings, and that it can break in that time. So keep an eye on that. All right, so hot topic in this starting this year in February. So now these things have been taken and put into place. There are new restrictions or requirements from Google and Yahoo when it comes to sending emails to them. So anyone that sends and delivers emails to personal Gmail accounts, that means at Gmail and at Google Mail, will have to put certain things into place. There are certain requirements that I'll cover in a moment. When Google first released these guidelines, they also included workspace accounts, but they have retracted that and have backtracked from that about a week or so after the release. And now for now, it only affects sending to @Gmail and Google Mail. But keep in mind, check whether you have maybe a sign-up form that collects @Gmail accounts, maybe you have an onboarding emails, maybe you have a newsletter, and maybe you have a use case where you also have kind of like a recruitment use case where you help people find jobs or connect companies to staff, and you might be using free Gmail accounts there. So keep in mind, it's not only cold email. Check your other sources or other streams of email. So what are the requirements? So for all senders, Google wants to have SPF and DKIM in place. So that's why I mentioned them in the beginning. They're important. And the most important change, and this is the kind of the change that shocked the whole internet and everyone was freaking out, is that the spam rates should be below 0.3%. That means if you send 1,000 emails, no more than 3 should be marked as spam by the recipient. It's not about the spam that Google automatically puts you in spam if you have a low reputation or your content is marked as spam. It's about the recipient actually going to your email and then marking that as spam. We're talking about these rates. And to see what your rates are, you need to connect your domain to Google Postmaster Tools. That's unfortunately the only tool that Google provides. It's a bit of a buggy tool, and we will cover the tool in our second session where we will go into tools and workflows, how to identify problems with deliverability. But be aware that there is a tool for that, and you can connect your domain to that. So for all senders, these are the requirements, the most important ones at least. And then for anyone that sends over 5,000 messages or emails per day from a domain, in addition to SPF, DKIM, and spam rates, you have to set up DMARC. And DMARC has to align with either SPF or DKIM. So these are the most important changes. There is also, if you are sending over 5,000 emails a day from your domain, there is also a requirement of one-click unsubscribe. We don't have that feature at this moment, but we're working on it. The rollout for complying with that, I think, is June 2024. So there's plenty of time still that you have to kind of include a one-click unsubscribe. So when you have an email, you see the email in your inbox, they will see a little button there that allows the people with one click to basically unsubscribe from that email. So that's going to be coming soon too. But again, rollout for that, according to Google, is till June to comply with that. And again, it affects only if you send over 5,000 emails daily from your domain to Google Mail and Gmail accounts. All right, what can you do? You can measure your rates. As I mentioned already, Google Postmaster Tools is one of the tools you can, or basically the most important tool when it comes to Google to measure your rates. You connect your domain there. You could diversify your risk by basically making sure you don't have only one outbound domain, right? This is usually common practice, but there's still a lot of agencies and companies that I see that basically, put a lot of mailboxes on one domain, and then if that domain gets into trouble, you have, disrupt your operations, disrupt your pipeline. So make sure you have multiple domains. We're going to go into that later too. 1, 2, 3 follow-ups. That's an interesting thing, and I see a trend coming, and people talking about sending like 2 emails nowadays. And generally, with the data we have that we looked at over hundreds of thousands of campaigns, usually the first email is important. The second email is very important. So the first follow-up. The follow-up can sometimes generate more replies than the first email. And then the third email, yes, and the fourth, fifth, sixth, they're usually giving you much less of a return if you just send cold emails. If there's no multi-channel in between, if there's no calls in between, if it's just email, usually after the third email, there's not much what they contribute to the overall campaign. And generally, the most campaigns that perform pretty well are having up to 5 follow-ups. And then usually it's time to switch for later or take the prospect out of the sequence. You have to imagine that every email that you send, every follow-up that you send increases your risk to being marked as spam, right? Because you're being you might be annoying the person receiving your emails. So there's a trade-off for that. Yeah. In some countries you have, right, to be compliant, to add an unsubscribe option. And with those requirements in place, especially if you send at Google Mail and Gmail, sometimes it's just better to have an unsubscribe. And there's multiple ways. Like I mentioned, one-click unsubscribe is one option. We have an unsubscribe link that you can add, and you can make it GDPR compliant, so it can be encrypting the prospect's data on demand when they want it. You could do a soft unsubscribe, basically saying at the end of the message, if you don't want to receive any further emails from me, just let me know. Anything that you kind of steer the user away from marking your spam, anything you try might persuade some people to not mark your spam, but rather go through that option of unsubscribe. Yeah. So, and with 0.3%, 3 out of 1,000 seems low, but it's quite hard to even be below that. So make use of those possibilities. And then there is, of course, you shouldn't be spamming, right? And personalization has grown over the years now from, personalization of type, hey, I see you are in city XYZ or country XYZ, and then you name the sports team there, to now personalization that you can create that basically emulates research you would be doing as a human. Right? You would be going on a website, you would be reading some reviews of a company, you would be looking what this company is maybe targeting, what's the ICP, what problems they're solving. All of those things you are now able to kind of replicate via tools that have come out, right? Like Clay is an example. There's a couple of them that allow you to scrape websites, that allow you to look at LinkedIn posts, that allow you to use AI in your workflow so that your messages look like they have some research behind them. Yeah. So this is the kind of personalization you want to go for, so that also your email seems like you put more work into it. If you put more work into it, you're less likely to be marked as spam because you're not like one of those hundreds of thousands of emails, generic cold emails. All right. Provider, domains, and emails. So for provider, generally, if you go with like the big major providers, I would recommend GoDaddy / Outlook, especially if you will have like average engagement. The only problem with Outlook sometimes could be that your account will be blocked. You need to look into the bounce codes or the bounce messages you get. If there is something mentioned like you're not a valid sender or bad outbound sender, phrases like that, usually generate 100% bounce rate until you unlock that account. So you're still being able to send. So be aware of that. Be cautious of that. Some people have resolved that by forwarding those bounces to like a consolidated mailbox if those phrases appear, to help them kind of monitor and quickly reactivate that account. Sometimes Microsoft or Outlook unlocks that account by themselves. But generally be aware of that. This is kind of like a killer I always see when someone has like 60, 70, 80% bounce rate. This is the predominantly this bounce code appears there, or bounce message. But generally Outlook is more forgiving, or GoDaddy is more forgiving if you have average engagement in your cold emails. If you came to the point, or if you're aware, if you are in charge of your engagement, open rates, reply rates, if you can drive good results, give Google a try. Yeah. But generally, if you go for higher volume and lower engagement, Google will be much more restricted. Yeah, so be careful with that. And there is Zoho. Zoho had a rush, and a lot of people moved to Zoho until Zoho realized that a lot of people moved to Zoho to send cold emails, and they have been very restrictive and banning a lot of people. So generally, Zoho is not very friendly towards cold emails. I mean, so is Google too, but Zoho has had their incident recently. Then there is SendGrid. There's a possibility to send through SendGrid. The problem is just it's against the terms of services or sender policy. I had a client and she was sending via SendGrid. Then a prospect complained. SendGrid asked her to provide opt-in information. She couldn't, right, because it was cold email. And then she got banned overnight. And now she was left without sending infrastructure. So she had to set up, new domains, new emails. So be aware that SendGrid is, either you have a custom deal with them, but generally they're not very welcoming. And then there is providers coming up One of them is, for instance, Mailreef with like a dedicated SMTP just for cold email outbound. And they also have cool features like automatically setting up SPF decam, which is very useful when you have to set up 20, 30, 50, 100 mailboxes or domains, and they do that automatically. And Mailreef is one of them. There's a couple of them popping out now that you can check out and test. So at least some of your portfolio, dedicate some of your portfolio for these kind of new providers to see if they give you good deliverability for your use case, for your target. When it comes to domains, and I may sound like a broken record because I say that all the time, but again, even looking at accounts that we see in Woodpecker, we still see people sending from their main business domain. Generally, that's advised against because imagine you're sending from your main domain. It works well because the domain is probably having a good reputation because there's a lot of positive interaction, right? You're sending to your clients sending emails back, or you're doing inbound maybe through your main domain. So there's a lot of good engagement. And now you insert an email stream with low engagement, maybe high bounce rate, maybe you get blacklisted somewhere, and that's going to tarnish your reputation, and then your normal business communication goes into spam. So the general advice is to avoid that risk and set up dedicated outbound domains that sound similar, look similar to your main business domain, and then basically do a forwarding to your main business domain. So another thing what you have to keep in mind is that spammers usually immediately start sending from a new domain without a warm-up. So that's something to keep in place, keep in mind. And we, as I said in the beginning, we don't want to share a lot of characteristics with them. Generally, general good advice is to not send in the first 7 to 14 days. Why? Because if you buy a new domain, there are certain blacklists that automatically list you because you're having a young domain. And the reason why they list you automatically is because spammers and scammers do this kind of pattern. And this pattern is very showing that it might be a spammer or scammer that has set up that domain. So if you wait a couple days, you're already going to have a better standing, a better first impression, and you don't share that characteristic with the spammers. About 2 years ago, the usual recommendation for domain warm-up was 90 days. Now, with prospects being at an all-time low, a lot of sequences moving towards a pricing that is with unlimited mailboxes, their warm-up recommendations are moving to shorter and shorter intervals. That doesn't necessarily mean that's a good recommendation, because reputation that you build through warm-up, you can't cheat on that, right? Because it takes time to build trust and reputation. So the general advice was always 90 days, usually 90 days for a domain. Nowadays, I would say minimum 30 days is what you should look into, depending on how important you value that domain, how important you value those mailboxes. And there's certain approaches you can do, and I'm going to cover 2 of those later down the line too. Another thing that comes up and questions that I'm going to get asked and people, kind of want to know the answer for is, I've gotten an H domain from my client. Is that safe to use for sending? And generally, the answer is no, because with the H domain, what you go around is usually that, you're not listed on a blacklist that has been listing, young domains. But if you don't have really good data on what the domain was doing, was it sending code? Was it sending emails? Was the engagement good? You don't really know if that email is ready or that domain is ready for sending. And another thing is that even if it was sending a year ago and now it didn't send for a whole year, reputation kind of also decays. So even if it had stellar reputation, because it wasn't sending for a long time, that reputation probably went back to neutral, and said domain is really not ready for sending cold emails yet. So be aware of that. And again, the point with using your main domain or using your client's main domain brings an inherent risk with it. When you work long-term with a client, you could try using subdomains. I'm going to cover that in later slides too. That would be another possibility to kind of use the main domain's reputation to improve your warm-up schedule. When it comes to emails, and again, as I said, spammers and scammers send from day one. That would be another characteristic you are sharing with them if you follow that pattern. When it comes to emails, the general consensus or general advice is 1 to 3 emails per domain. You can go up to 5. And some people do really like one email per domain. That's probably the most expensive approach. Also maintenance-wise, it's much more to maintenance because you need many more domains, but it gives you the best isolation. So if you burn one domain, you burn one email. If you go with 3 emails per domain, it's probably cheaper, but the risk is bigger because if you burn the domain, the emails usually follow. And but generally, I would say you should do a couple more emails per domain. Because, for instance, if you want to have data in Google Postmaster tools, there needs to be a certain volume per day for it to show you data. Yeah, and it gives you the reputation data, the spam rates. And usually you need about 100 emails a day from your domain to Google accounts. Yeah, so if you have one mailbox, that's going to be quite hard. So usually I would say you should have 3, maybe up to 5. Depends on how well you can manage your engagement. Depends on how you use those mailboxes, and we're going to cover those 2 scenarios later down the line, for which it makes sense to go to 5 and for which it makes sense to be more on the lower side. So also best practices, use last name, first name combinations. I still see people sending from info ad or sales ad. Usually those emails do not convert very well because it directly tells the prospect that this is a cold email. And especially in the US market where cold email is oversaturated, those kind of emails do not perform. So use first name, last name combinations to just basically make sure that you don't fall into that trap. When you warm up a domain, that also warms up your emails that you have in the warm-up tool at this moment. But keep in mind that if you have finished your warm-up of the domain and you add a new mail, you need to warm up that email also. Yeah. And generally, if you have an already warmed up domain, warming up just a new email on that is usually much faster. Yeah. And again, general consensus 2 years ago was 30 days, and nowadays 14 days is kind of the minimum. But that means you have already a warmed up domain, and you're spinning up a new email on that. All right, sender's reputation. This is the most important aspect, or your most important currency to land in the inbox. There's a lot of other things, and we're now excluding things that you instantly see, like you are on a blacklist, right? If you're on a blacklist and you're sending to someone and the provider uses that blacklist, you land in spam, no matter of your reputation. But let's exclude that you don't have any technical problems. When it comes to all the other things, sender reputation is one of the, if not the most important aspect that makes sure that you land in the inbox. And let's see what can help you to influence building or destroying reputation. So there's 2 things I like to kind of look at when it comes to reputation. There's characteristics and signals. Characteristics are static things, and you've seen some of them already, like sending from day one. But another static characteristic, so something that doesn't change, you have it from when you start sending or when you set up your mailbox, is the provider you have chosen. Or you're sending to someone or to people that don't know you, right? And within those 3 that I listed, 2 of them, as we already showed, are associated very strongly with scammers and spammer behavior. Yeah. And then the provider is a question mark because we don't really know. You can choose a provider that inherently is known to send spam, and you should avoid that. Or you can use a provider that is safe to send, and then you will be on the positive side. When it comes to the other component of reputation that influence reputation, there are also signals that you send, and signals are something that is dynamic. So these are things that happen, and you can stop them from happening, or you can start them from appearing. Yeah, or they can start appearing. So, for instance, signals could be your email engagement, right? Replies, opens, right? They can change at any time. There could be something like being marked as spam. There could be your sending volume or your sending patterns. And again, being marked as spam is a negative signal you'll be sending to the email service provider if some of the users mark you as spam, right? Because that tells the ESP that your emails are spam, basically, and it's a very strong signal, influencing your reputation negatively. And then there's email engagement, question mark, sending volume, and pattern, question mark, because it depends on where you are at the spectrum. Are you positively skewed or are you negatively skewed? And then just to give you an example with sending volume and pattern, if you have a sequencer, for instance, Woodpecker here, You can set the mailbox the following way, right? You could send 300 emails a day. You can leave 10 to 20 seconds between each email. Yeah, this is a setting that people used to have quite a while ago. And what it creates is a very recognizable pattern. For instance, here you see every 11 seconds, 10 seconds, 12 seconds, 13 seconds, 10 seconds again, we are sending an email. Usually a human is not able to send emails that fast. And also you can see that the seconds repeat. Like there's a very repeatable pattern, right? 11 is 3 times, number 12 is 2 times, number 10 is 3 times. So it basically reeks or shows the ESP that you use automation. And you kind of want to be on the safe side to emulate or kind of appear human-like when you send cold emails, but use automation. So if you, the very same tool, the very same section, if you just set it to a different setting, for instance, 50 emails a day with a wide gap in seconds between each email, you create a pattern that is not repeating all the time, and that looks much more human, because that looks more like a human has written those emails despite you using automation. Okay, so let's dive into what builds or destroys reputation. Building reputation, high engagement, open rate, someone reopens your emails, someone replies to emails, emails being marked as important, emails being taken out of spam, low bounce rates, usually the industry standard is under 2%, SPF, DKIM, DMARC setup and passing and aligned, and then there's many other things. And usually when you use a warm-up service, what they emulate or kind of do is usually focusing on those first 3 things. So they send emails in your name to other mailboxes with your mailbox, that other mailbox in that network replies, and there's like a artificial communication being generated at a high reply rate, let's say 30%, 40%. Those kind of actions show the ESP that your emails are wanted, that your emails generate engagement. So that will build your reputation, your sender reputation up. And then being marked as important, basically what the sentence says, right? The email is perceived as important. And then emails being taken out of spam, basically it tells the ESP that, they put you into spam, but your email is actually valuable. And then there's things that harm your reputation. For instance, low engagement, right? So open rates, 20%, reply rates, let's say 1%, things that, 0.5, something like that. So things that show, or interactions that show that the emails are not really wanted, that they don't create engagement. Bounce rate over 5%. So there is no like fixed guideline on how many percentage is bad. You can carry a higher bounce rate with very good reputation, but it's going to be, harming you down the line. When you see something between 2 and 5, I would generally start and look into the inbox, look into the bounce messages, what the messages are saying, and then act accordingly. Usually it's a list cleaning issue. Sometimes you might have a very direct message saying like, you have been blocked or you bounced because of low sender reputation. That's a very clear signal. That means your reputation is low, you haven't warmed up enough. You need to take out that email or mailbox or domain and rewarm it, and then you can slowly reintroduce it back into cold email. Sudden spikes in sending, that's a very strong pattern, because imagine you have a mailbox, you're sending like 10, 15 emails a day, someone hacks your account, gets your password, starts sending 100, 200, 500,000 emails a day. There's a spike in sending, and that indicates to the ESP that you might have been hacked. You might, someone is using your account to spread unsolicited emails or, spam emails or scam emails. So hitting spam traps is another thing. Spam traps, just in short, there's multiple types of spam traps, but one of the spam traps you can hit is, for instance, imagine you had an old Hotmail account 10 years ago. You haven't used it, the email service provider took away your email account and it kind of recycled it as a spam trap. And now if someone, scrapes a list or gets a list on the internet or whatever, and that email is on that list, the ESP knows that email is not used by a human anymore. And if you hit that spam trap, it significantly lowers your reputation. So there is, cleaning tools, validation tools that specialize cleaning those out. For instance, there's like IP quality score, which is one of the ones that had, from what I know, very good rate of removing spam rates because they keep track. They have a database of those spam traps. But in Woodpecker, you also have validation built in via use bouncer, and they're also quite good at finding those and filtering those out for you in the background. All right, failing authentication repeatedly. So SPF DKIM fails all the time. It happens. It can happen that it fails from time to time. Yeah, but if that repeatedly happens at a high rate, that also will harm your reputation. Being marked as spam by the recipient, again, this is a very strong signal because someone, went out of their way to mark you as spam. It's an extra effort from the user's perspective. And then landing in spam and not being taken out, which is, again, with time, as your reputation goes lower and lower, the ESP might start putting your emails in spam to see if the email belongs there. Yeah, imagine you have a newsletter. In a newsletter, people expect your email. So they will be going into the spam folder sometimes to check and take it out of spam. But with cold email, usually you don't have that, right? Because no one expects your email. So landing in spam or not being taken out over time tells the ESP, oh, I'm putting those emails in spam. No one's taking them out. They really belong there. I should put more in there. Yeah. So this is how you get those like reply open rates that are declining over time. Because you're, being, let's say, some people say shadow banned, you're being put into spam more and more. All right. Let's look at 2 warm-up scenarios. Scenario number 1, where we have a timeline of 90 days. And let's assume we have a reputation that goes from great to bad. And this is scenario number 1. So you start sending from day 1. At 14 days, you consider finishing your warm-up. Generally, you shouldn't. Yeah. But let's say you consider, but you kept on going. You finished warm-up at around 30 days, and you can see you had a little bit of a better increase in reputation at around 30 days. Yeah, here it's starting to go up higher. But, you followed the general guidelines. You did only like 30 days. So your reputation is a little bit above neutral. It's going towards good. And then you start sending cold emails. Yeah, your open rates are about 40 to 50%. Everything is great. You keep sending cold emails. After now 14 days, your open rates go under 40%, still not bad. Now under 30%, you partially start to land in spam. As I said, emails being put in spam, they are never being taken out of there because, no one expects your cold emails. And then after 60 days, you'll end up in the space of almost all your emails are landing in spam, daily disconnects. And that's also an interesting pattern. Yeah, so lower reputation, the email service provider might start to kind of disconnect the emails more often. You might see things like that. We definitely had people that were having a correlation there. Yeah. So we are, of course, never 100% sure because the ESP doesn't tell you that, but you can see this kind of pattern popping up sometimes. You might be blacklisted here and there, and your open rates go under 20%. And generally, you shouldn't be keeping sending cold emails if you have under 20%. If you want to have a high return of investment on your list. Yeah, if your list costs 0, some people, some agencies really scale that way that they just send, basically to spam all the time, but they have so low prospect acquisition costs that people still find them in spam. But generally under 20%, it means almost all your emails go to spam because you will have also opens by bots. You will have opens by providers that automatically open your emails by loading that tracking pixel in advance, especially on Apple devices. So you need to be aware that you're never going to be like 0 open rate, but under 20% usually means all the major providers put you into spam. And the biggest problem with that is that you're going through your list, you're burning through your list, and you could have one of those emails could have gone to one of the clients that could have become your biggest client yet. Yeah, so there's a lot of opportunity loss if you just churn through your list, burn through it, and then you did not pick up on those clients that could have, left you a lot of money, could have gone into in a contract with you for many, many years. So another scenario could be this way. So again, 90 days, and you don't touch the domain for the first 14 days, no sending, no warm-up, nothing. You then start warm-up, and you might experience a much faster acceleration when it comes to reputation gain. Yeah, because you are not sharing a negative characteristic such as spammers, right? Sending from day 1. Yeah, so you're not seen as a spammer from the very beginning. Then you get to like great reputation. You have open rates of 60 to 90%. you start sending slowly. So you don't suddenly start sending all cold emails, turn off warm up. If you do that, then for the ESP is also kind of obvious, right? You had 60 or 30 or 40% reply rates, and suddenly you send cold emails and you're at 1 till 5%. Yeah. So there's a very dramatic shift when it comes to engagement. Yeah. So you kind of want to mix in those cold emails into the warm up, or kind of taper off the warm up and mix in the cold emails, or replace with the cold emails. If you are at this reputation, you usually have seamless operations, less disconnects, and great ROI on your emails because you make most of those of that list. Even if you turn off warm up, after 30 days, you still have pretty good open rates, because the reputation you build, the foundation you build, is much stronger. Yeah. So reputation is, like a credit score, it's an investment. If you invest more into it, you get much more return over time from it. All right, this is an example from our outbound, one of our mailboxes. We send up to 75 emails, as you can see here, daily. And we get 50, 70, 60% reply rates. You can see at the very end, we're dipping into 40%. That's where I would start to look into it. But generally on a daily basis, so when you look at the daily email sent, and for that day, how many opens we had, we usually go around this. And reply rates, 5%, 9%, 11% on a day-by-day basis. And if you take all the follow-ups and emails from your campaign and aggregate it to a campaign level, you get stats like this, right? 76% open rates, 48% reply rates, 90% open rates, 25% responded, and similar example here. Now, of course, your list is very important. Your offer is very important, right? But your deliverability is also very important. Yeah, especially if you're not aware, it can be a silent killer to your ROI. Right. So that's why I would like to invite you guys to collaborate with us over the next month, especially over the next month where you have the free trial, to kind of set you up, fix any things that you have questions or any things that went wrong, you're unsure why, to work on those things so that we can help you guys to set up a foundation that will be for long-term success and long-term safe sending. All right. And I said I'm going to address a few things. One of them is sending from day one. So there will be 3 tactics, a little bit of food for thought for you guys. Of course, every business is different. Not everyone can apply those, but a little bit food for thought. And if you have ideas, please share them with us, share them with the community. Always happy to add new tactics here. Okay, so tactic number 1, can you offer a complimentary service in the first month? Can you buy yourself some time to prepare the infrastructure for your sending? Yeah, because as we said, you need to provide value from day one, but the email, also the channel you want to provide with, is not ready from day one. So you need to warm it up. So can you put something in place that buys you basically time while you already work with the client? And there's different things different agencies do. Some of them, align on copy, tone with the client. Some audit the client's online presence, at least like landing pages. Yeah. So because, even if they get replies, if someone gets an email, they check out the website. If that website does not convince the prospect, they might not reply, or they might not even be interested in that service. So you could work with your clients on your buyer persona, ICP building. There's a lot of work to be done because, just having one ICP, then you can have sub ICPs to be more specific with your pain points that you discover, that you address, that you communicate. That all makes better copy. The better you're aligned, the better your copy, right? And you can get this information, in testimonials. You can get those information through existing clients in interviews, right? So what language do they use? How do they talk about it? Using their terminology. What have you solved? How have you transformed their business, right? Those kind of things can be worked with the client to basically be and help enhance the copy. And as I said, we will have a session on copy with Yuri on Wednesday. We're going to dive into copy much more in depth here. Can you do workshops with your clients? Because even if depending on how deeply you provide prospects or leads to your clients, right? You might be just sending them a reply. You might be forwarding them a positive reply. You might be even going so far that you nurture the prospects for them, or even putting appointments directly into their calendar. But in the end, the client has to go to that call, right? Usually. And then it depends on how well they can close the deal, right? How well they can present their product, services, right? So you could do workshops on that. You could help the client close more deals. If they close more deals, they're more likely to stay with you, and you retain them as a client, because even if you do the best work ever, if they cannot close any deals, they're probably going to be giving up on the channel. All right, you could help them build their brand on LinkedIn, right? So that's something, it's becoming very popular, especially 2024, personal brand and presence on LinkedIn. There's agencies that offer these services to do for their clients. Again, this doesn't require any warm-up. Yeah, can fill a month or two time while you provide value, while you also do the warm-up and preparation of the infrastructure for cold mailing. Tactic number 2. Oh yeah, one last thing that I added today is renting domains and emails from a pool of emails that align with the industry field. So I've seen that some people do. It's a bit of a slippery slope, but imagine you have a few domains in your agency that are related to, like, I don't know, the medical field. They have like generic names. They are not really aligning with the brand of your customer, but these are warmed up. They are, ready to go. They are very well maintained. And then you send through those for your client, yeah, for the time you're working with the client. And then in that time, you do create dedicated outbound domains for your client, and then kind of replace them and, sort them out. Gives you a more possibility to start from day one, but, you have to really maintain that and be aware that, you don't mix clients. So it's something people do. Some people do that, and it gives you a possibility to start very early. Tactic number 2. So it's okay, send from day one, yeah, but accept that you will have lower ROI while you do sending from day one. Buy extra domains, don't touch them for 7 days, warm them up for 30 days. And then once the warm-up is finished, rotate them into your campaign. 30 days or longer warm-up, right? We said 30 to 90 days. So you rotate them into your campaign, and then you rotate out those burnt domains, those burnt mailboxes that you had. You can put them back into the warm-up. If they are not majorly damaged, and then you rotate those new ones in. Yeah. So basically, you're starting campaigns from day one. You will have low ROI. You will have not great open rates, but you're already working on the infrastructure that you're going to replace it with. And generally, I would also recommend to slowly ramp up, so that you get to 50 emails per day per mailbox. Not from 0 to 50, but over time. Every 2 days, every 3 days, you increase that volume. So you kind of gradually roll out your cold email sending, because you can also then watch the stats and see if you already get some signals from the ESP, especially any bounces with domain reputation. All right. And then you keep warming up, usually 30 to 50 emails per day with usually a 30% reply rate. You can go higher if your warm-up tool allows for that. But generally, this is kind of the range. And we're going to cover like how much you should send nowadays in a moment, what the best practices are. Tactic number 3. So if you have a client that you're going to work with for longer, let's say 3 or 6 months, you could also try to go towards subdomains. That basically means don't send anything from the main domain for 7 days. You warm it up for 30 days. Then you create subdomains. Then you create 1 to 3 emails on each subdomain and warm up that subdomain. So now you're at about 60 days. And each subdomain will warm up or strengthen a little bit the main domain. And what you also get is that every time you create a new subdomain, it is not a new main domain. So those blacklists that are listing main domains because they're new, you won't have that problem with subdomains. And you will have a better baseline when it comes to reputation than if you create a completely new domain. Yeah, because you have a warmed up main domain on which you created a subdomain that you warmed up a little bit too. And that warm-up will be more effective than if you would have done a warm-up just for the main domain. So you get better ROI. And you can do it like this. You can, for instance, have a prefix like send.main.com, where main is your main domain and send is like kind of the subdomain here. And then you can have mailboxes on that. There's, of course, risks with that. If you do something really, really bad, some of the reputation may spill over on the main domain. Yeah, but generally, creating subdomains, you create a distinct or different mail stream, especially, for instance, for newsletters. and the ESP with time will figure out, oh, this is a different email stream still on the main domain, but it's a different type of emails. Yeah, so you kind of have a little bit better isolation than just using the main domain. All right, so how many domains and emails do I need? And this is kind of something I generally say to work backwards. What results do you want, right? So for instance, set your goal, and the goal is a number and a time frame. So for instance, I need to deliver 10 positive replies per month to my clients. Yeah, so you have 10 positive replies, and per month is the time frame. So now what are your typical benchmarks for positive replies? I don't know them, but from our experience looking at our data, and our AI also kind of marks emails, whether they're positive or negative or neutral. And from that data, we see this. So it generally takes about 70 emails, delivered emails, to get one reply. Yeah, so you send 70 emails, that includes follow-ups. And out of 70 delivered emails, so excluding bounce, you get one reply. And there are agencies that can do it in 20. Yeah, they have figured everything out. They have good deliverability. They're very efficient. They can get a reply every 20. And then to cover the most cases, in 80% of cases, 1 out of 10 will be a positive reply. So every 10 replies, you get one positive reply. If we take that all together, then we get to a number of 700 delivered emails to get one positive reply. Yeah, and as I said, this does not mean contacted prospects. That means prospects plus contacted prospects plus follow-ups. Yeah, so that all the emails included in the sequence. Because you have to, as we said, a follow-up also costs. Yeah, it costs you or puts up your risk for being reported as spam, for instance, because you're sending so many follow-ups. So every email has a cost to it. Yeah, so that's why I look at this data usually by delivered emails. Yeah, so 700 delivered emails, usually one positive reply. And now we're going to look at how many domains and mailboxes we need. We need at 10 positive replies per month. That means 7,000 delivered emails per month. You can approximate a month has about 20 workdays or 22. For simplicity's sake, I did 20. That means 350 emails per day. 50 emails per mailbox per day is usually recommended nowadays. That means 7 mailboxes, usually around 3 domains. And then for every 3 domains, you could have a backup, so around 30% backup. If you burn one of the domains, you have already one domain and email or emails ready to rotate into your campaign, so you don't disturb your pipeline, you don't disturb your operations. If you burn through more or faster than you can warm up those backups, then of course you need to increase that ratio. So this is what I show you here. So 50 emails per day per mailbox. This is kind of the average consensus, the general consensus nowadays you will hear. Back then, when I was in Woodpecker 5 years ago, when we started with things, you could send 300, 200 emails, even with kind of okay open rates, as long as you took care of your reputation. Now it's much harder. As you can see, we also ourselves also send only 75 maximum, but we have very good reputation and we have very good engagement. And the internet, some people go even as low as 20. Yeah? I've seen that being promoted. But if you have especially warm up running 50 emails per day with, let's say, 30 cold emails, 20 warm up, you can probably be pretty safe. All right, I'm going to show you 2 email infrastructures for 2 scenarios. One is a low ticket, so you offer something of low value, let's say a meeting, or low cost, let's say a meeting or a short consultation call. You would do kind of a spray and pray approach, enhanced with a little bit of AI maybe. And then you would have another approach or a set of mailboxes for high deliverability, yeah, where every email counts. Let's say you have very high value deals that you want to make sure, as I said, that every email lands, because it could be your biggest client ever. And generally, it's good to have 2 different sets of mailboxes, right? Those that you want to deliver to those high value clients, you don't do kind of a spray and pray approach from. Yeah, you can even go as far as filtering out any Google Mail and Gmail accounts from it. Yeah, so what you want to do with that to have kind of these 2 sets. Yeah, and I'm going to go into in a short bullet list to how I would set those up. And you can see, of course, I'm only going to be talking about infrastructure. You make sure you have a good value proposition. You have worked out that value proposition that matches your ICP or sub ICP, and it has meaningful personalization. Yeah, that means something that shows that you put work, that you do research for that company. Okay, 2 email infrastructures, low ticket, 1 till 3 emails per domain, warm up for 14 days, 30 till 50% backup emails ready to go. Yeah, so if you have set 10 emails, about 3 till 5 you should have as backup, so you can rotate them in. If you burn the ones that are currently sending, take those out, put them back into warm up and only warm up, no sending. That will accelerate the reputation regain and rebuilding, so that they are ready to go when the next batch is kind of declining in terms of deliverability. Keep those emails in a warm up. Yeah, so 20 emails per day per mailbox warm up, and then 30 cold emails per day per mailbox. So now you're at the 50 per day. That gives you 900 emails per day if you have, or cold emails a day if you have 30 mailboxes, right? Because if you have 30 emails, if we send, let's say, daily, then that's 900 emails. That's 18,000 emails a month. If we need 70 emails to get 1 reply, that's 257 replies. And then if we apply 1 out of 10 is positive, you have about 1 out of 10 to 2 out of 10, you have about 25 to 50 positive replies a month. With an infrastructure of about 40 to 45 mailboxes, including backups on about 20 domains. And you get all those slides. You can look at this. You can, have your thoughts on that. And I welcome any feedback if you guys have worked out something different. But this is usually a general recommendation. It depends, of course, on your engagement, your target, your copy, and a lot of other things, how well this performs. And then when it comes to warm-up services, there are more and more warm-up services coming that don't charge you by mailbox connected. Yeah? For instance, Mailivery is one of them. They give you 600 emails per day with unlimited mailboxes. So now, for instance, if you have sent 30 emails, if you have sent 20 warm-up emails a day, that gives you 30 mailboxes that you can cover with their $79 subscription. It's much cheaper than having to pay for every mailbox. That would be much more expensive. For the high ticket setup, I would go with 3 to 5 domains, emails per domain. Why? Because usually you would start seeing data in Google Postmaster tools at that scale, because you're sending about 100 a day for them from that domain, which allows you to see a lot of data. The spam rates, like I said, SPF, DCAM, you will see reputation. Yeah, and I'm going to show you in the second session all those tools. So generally here you can go with more emails per domain because you also be going for higher engagement. Yeah, you warm up for 30 days at least. Yeah, and the first 7 days no sending. You taper off the warm up slowly and ramp up your cold emails over the next 30 days. So you, like I said, you mix in your cold emails and kind of take out or taper off your warm up emails. You don't do it from day one, stopping warm up and then suddenly sending cold emails, because that's going to be sending a very strong signal. And then usually you would set at 50 to 70 cold emails per day per mailbox. And you saw that with the example that I gave with our outbound team that sends up to 75. This is kind of the range you can go, and we don't have any warm up running. And one domain with 3 to 5 emails as a backup every 10. So like a 10% backup usually is enough to keep operations running and pipeline flowing. You should be aiming at around 50% open rate per day. Yeah. If you see something below that, you might want to consider slowly rotating that email out. Yeah, you always have a little bit of time, but once the campaign is finished, you can kind of take that mailbox out and rewarm it. Long term, you might consider subdomains, right? Like we said, that's a possible direction to go in if you have a long-term commitment. Open rates under 40%, move them out, warm them up, and don't do any cold email at that time. Keep a plain text signature, because every signature you put in a lot of graphics, a lot of links, that all puts a lot of HTML in the email. We're going to cover that in session 2. But also adds links to it. And, do you know the reputation of the domains that you're linking to? That's the question. So best chances, if you want to land in the inbox, keep a plain text signature at this moment, especially in the beginning. And no links in the first email. That's also generally better, especially if you don't know how the reputation is of the domain you're linking to. Especially avoid Google Drive links because those usually are used by spammers and scammers, and you don't know what kind of file type is behind that link. So be careful with that. All right, and why no warm-up for the high-ticket deliverability? Because generally Google is very against automatic warm-up. That's why in Woodpecker you don't have automatic warm-up for Google accounts, because they send these kind of notice to everyone that had automated warm-up that they are not allowing automated warm-up. It's against the terms of service. If you don't turn it off, we're going to take away a lot of your access to authentication you can use within the app. And so we complied with that. So that's why a lot of the we don't have the warm-up for Google accounts. You can still warm up mailboxes from Outlook, but Google is generally advised against. But at the end, the alternative to this warm-up is, manual warm-up. So that's hard to do. But if you really take care of your engagement and have your good engagement, you don't really need warm-up. Yeah? And then you don't run the risk of Google finding out you're using a warm-up, artificial warm-up, and then kind of blocking you or not looking even at the warm-up emails and knowing your reputation. All right, and then Woodpecker, because you're going to be running a lot of mailboxes, for instance, for the low-ticket offer, we introduced also this mailbox rotation feature where in one campaign you can add as many mailboxes as you want, and then we rotate through those mailboxes, keeping in mind the daily limit of the mailbox to not go over that automatically for you. Yeah, so you have one campaign, you can have up 20 mailboxes even in it, and that way you can scale the daily volume for this campaign without running into problems to go too high per sending per mailbox. All right, with that being said, for today, that is the first session. And as I said, the first session was a lot of fundamentals, but I hope you guys also saw new things, had some food for thought. And I appreciate any kind of feedback. And we have the link to the slides as well as a questionnaire in the chat. I'll be very, very welcome to any kind of feedback. The questionnaire is anonymous, so you can leave any kind of feedback, hopefully constructive, to these sessions and how useful they were for you. And now I can answer any questions for you guys. If you have any, please drop them in the Q&A section at the bottom, and I'll try to cover all of them. Okay, we have one question here. How do you have more details on reply benchmarks by sector approach ECT? So by sector, not. I have quite old data on that. But this year we're going to release benchmarks by kind of industry. And you can industry/use case. You can imagine that when you, for instance, have a use case of recruitment, yeah, you're sending an email to a company with a candidate, or you're sending to a candidate a job offer from a company. These will generate very good replies, and you will have replies of 10, 15, 20, 40% even in campaigns. That's what I see at least. Of course, if you do cold email, you will have much lower benchmarks. And what's important within the cold email space is, for instance, if you send to US, that's an oversaturated market, you will have the lowest kind of reply benchmarks. But if you send, for instance, to Latin America, Portugal, or Brazil, these countries are not that oversaturated yet with cold email. It is also that kind of culture comes into place that the people are very nice. They reply to those emails, which generates engagement. So there I see much better replies and engagement there. And then they might not even need any kind of warm-up tools because they generally be able to generate good engagement. Specifically for US, usually average reply per email is the 70 delivered per one mail, which equates about 1.4% reply rate. That's kind of the median taken across all industries for US. And then if we look at the whole campaign, so with all the follow-ups, usually 5%. And if you want to belong to the top 10%, you'd probably be looking at 15% and higher. I hope that answered your question. If you have any other questions, please let me know. Okay, email infrastructure for what email infrastructure would you recommend for high deliverability? Okay, so generally I would recommend, as I said, where we had the domain section, to go with the major providers. So Google and Outlook/GoDaddy. GoDaddy is basically like a reseller. And they generally take a lot of the guesswork if something is wrong with my provider out of the equation. And they put more, power into your hands to control your deliverability. Yeah. So because and you might have things like this where you see get a Google account and you see that you're listed on a spam or blacklist. Usually that is SORPs, and SORPs lists a lot of Google IPs. There's nothing you can do about it, so don't freak out if you see that in one of the tools. We will cover that in session 2. But generally, I would go with the major providers for the majority of your portfolio, Google and Microsoft. And then I would experiment with some of the newer ones that are coming out, like Mailreef. You might try SendGrid a bit if you wanted to, but just be aware of that. That shouldn't be the majority of your portfolio. Yeah? I hope that helped, Jordan, with that question. So any recommended tools to check blacklists for your domains? So MX Toolbox, one word, mxtoolbox.com. And again, we're going to cover tools tomorrow. In tomorrow's session, I'm going to go, in every tool that I recommend. All the tools are free that I recommend. You can do a lot with free tools to kind of pinpoint the problems where you have to search, so you don't waste a lot of energy and frustration looking in the wrong place. Also mail tester, mail-tester.com. You can send an email there. They also do have a portion with spam blacklist check. Okay, so for another question, so for high ticket offers, how many emails would we aim for, since we are advised against warm up? Well, how many emails? It depends on how much volume you need to generate there. Like, again, you might remember that example with working backwards. Yeah, if we go here, that's going to take a bit. Here, yeah. So if you have, this is an example with like the 50 emails per day. So you would start with setting your goal. Like for the high ticket offers, how many do I need to, how many leads do I want to generate for the client when it comes to the high ticket offer? Yeah. And then you kind of take these benchmarks as a beginning, the 70, for instance. But you can also look at your previous campaigns that's better, because that takes into account how well you have performed in the past, especially for your target, especially for your sector or industry. So you can take kind of the averages you had before and then kind of extrapolate. If I need to have 10 positive replies or even 10 deals, how many emails did that cost me? So that you can kind of work backwards and then send about 50 emails a day, and that will tell you how many mailboxes you need. I hope that helped. So redirection, does redirection from my new domain to the main domain affect deliverability? No, from what I know, it doesn't affect deliverability, because this is not really related to your sending. But and every agency that I know that does the setup with multiple main domains, it's part of the workflow to set up a redirect. Some of them use and some of the providers, the new providers that provide cold email infrastructure, do that automatically for you. There's even APIs. Some of the APIs allow you to set that. So generally, you want to have that forwarding, because worse is if a prospect goes to that domain that you are sending from, it's a similar domain to your main domain, but there is nothing there, right? And then you lost the lead, you lost that prospect. So better to have that forwarding on. All right. I don't see anything in the Q&A. I'm gonna check the chat quickly. Great insights. Do you use any platform to have access to multiple mailboxes? I'm looking for a cheaper platform besides Gmail. You can look into Mailreef, like I said, Marcos. Maybe Mailreef is one of them. Also in the community, if you guys join us, I can Google some more, because there's a few more that provide infrastructure. There's also resellers for Gmail accounts that the price is a bit lower, and there's supposedly reputable resellers. But there's always the risk of getting an email that was bought or resold to you, from a country, and Google might figure that out, and then you get banned. So there's resellers that sell it a bit cheaper than Gmail. GoDaddy is quite okay, and GoDaddy also has monthly contracts. So if you completely destroy your email or mailbox, you can kind of just cancel it the next month. So that's also a good approach. All right. Okay, so Jordan, you asked another question. So you mentioned Zoho was to be avoided. Is that merely due to their terms of service, right, or sending policy, or have Woodpecker clients had difficulties? So I mentioned Zoho because That's secondhand knowledge, I would tell you, but I monitor LinkedIn. I listen to every influencer too in this space. We are kind of connected, and there was just like a wave of people moving to Zoho. Generally in Woodpecker, when I look at the data and have a distribution of which providers are used, the majority, I think 95%, 90% is GoDaddy / Outlook or Google. Yeah, not many Zoho. Some SendGrid, as I said, some people try, and you can send a bit more volume there, but it's risky. So Zoho is secondhand knowledge. I followed the information, the signals from the internet, from certain communities that also are around cold emailing, and it was going around there that Zoho is starting to ban domains. There's also in the Reddit like R marketing. There's been news on that too. You can Google that, or you can search through that and get those information.